Welcome to Blueprint for Growth, Innovation in Housing. I'm your host, Amy Billis, Director of Housing Growth Innovation at Digital, Canada's global innovation cluster for digital technologies. Today, we're exploring the design and engineering phase of housing development. This stage is notoriously complex, involving multiple parties, often fraught with challenges that can lead to significant delays and costly revisions. From unclear permitting requirements to conflicting policies and the need for extensive coordination between multiple parties, we'll explore how technologies like BIM, AI-driven design tools, and standardized modular systems are addressing these pain points, ultimately accelerating housing production in BC.
Builders and architects are increasingly considering mass timber as a compelling alternative to traditional building materials. It can have a lower carbon footprint than concrete. It can be lighter and stronger than steel. And surprisingly, it can be just as fireproof. As the demand for next-generation wood products like mass timber advances, BC's vast growing forests are ready to answer the call.
Yahia Madkour is an architect and director of innovation with Perkins & Will. Yahia's expertise lies in the intersection of design and technology, where he has led multiple research clusters focusing on design innovation, construction, and digital fabrication. His projects delve deep into reduction and sustainability, making him a pioneer of eco-friendly architectural solutions. Yahia is currently collaborating with Digital on an exciting project involving mass timber housing prototypes with code compliance analytics for efficient design. In our conversation, let's explore the benefits of mass timber in sustainable construction, system designs, and the importance of regulatory readiness in the evolving housing landscape. Your project emphasizes the use of mass timber and modular prefabrication, which very much aligns with BC's Mass Timber Action Plan and all the recent building code changes, allowing for larger typologies of mass timber buildings in select communities in BC. What, in your perspective, is the future of mass timber and construction given these developments?
So mass timber, offers quite a bit of performance space. I think there is a bigger understanding of the sustainability aspects of using a renewable material. With the more stringent sustainability targets, I think that the municipalities are bringing and, our own responsibility towards the environment, I think it's quite important to understand. What really comes with mass timber as well is this idea of prefabrication. Because mass timber is an engineered product, it needs to be created within factories, whether you're using glulam or CLT panels. These are all very regulated in terms of the performance requirements. And with that, you're relying on factories and very predictable performance from the building material that you're using. And doing that, it allows us to use modular components. So if the design itself is based on modularity, it's based on adaptable metrics of ranges, using mass timber seems to be the perfect partner, where it addresses all of the sustainability metrics that we're trying to achieve, but at the same time accelerates all of these timelines that we're looking for.
The term pre-approved designs is often used, but I prefer the concept of regulatory readiness. This involves preparing designs and components to effectively meet regulatory requirements, simplifying the complex and time-consuming permitting process. In your current project, you're utilizing modular components and parametric designs. Can you elaborate on how this approach enhances regulatory readiness? Specifically, how do pre-approved components and digital tools reduce uncertainties and accelerate approvals?
So I think we think about this from the perspective first of design that then leads to regulatory readiness. So if you think about the design side of things, and again, touching on working with modular components, parametric design that allows for rapid prototyping and modular configuration, but also creates the adaptable flexibility of a kit of parts. So when you're working with this, it's a shift from using individual designs to using kit of parts and systems that actually fit together in a variety of configurations. And that's quite important, because once you start working with systems and there is a larger understanding of how configurations could happen to suit a range of needs, then you can also start to think about the permitting process in very similar ways. So if you start thinking about permitting from the perspective of reducing uncertainties, automating regularity checks, it benefits a lot when you're working with components that are known. So you're not at every single permitting process or regulatory approval, you're not starting from scratch not from design, and you're also not starting from scratch from trying to understand that design to figure out whether it is approvable or not. You're working with components that are pre-approved, and you know that there's a range of configurations when these components are put together up to certain limits, up to certain ranges, that they would be approvable. So once you get into a process of approving it once, then the next one and the next one and the one following is actually going to be quite quicker, especially if you have digital tools around to be able to quickly assess that. And by that, I mean, it's the idea of using digital compliance tools, automated checks. This, again, idea of green light, red light, and explanations of what it means, because once the systems are known, then you can actually enable the digital tools to be able to dive into these systems and understand whether they meet a particular regulation or not. And a lot of it is partnerships, and that's why I think earlier we talked about the importance of partnerships between government authorities, the municipalities, the private sector, because there is know-how and data that is embedded in each of these processes, and the more that we can actually weave the connections between them and connect the dots in a much more streamlined way, the better it is for all of us. We're cutting waste, we're bringing that benefit back to the people that are actually going to be, habiting the projects that we're working on. So I think it's a win-win from both sides.
You gotta love a win-win. Kit of parts is not a new concept. It's a bunch of pre-designed, prefabricated building components. Kit of parts has been around for 100 years, but it's gained renewed attention. The kit of parts concept is fascinating. It's kind of like thinking of a house construction as a sophisticated, grown-up version of Lego or Meccano. These childhood toys give us a great analogy for understanding the power of modular, adaptable systems in construction. Just as with Lego, where you can create countless structures from a finite set of standardized bricks, the kit of parts approach allows for immense creativity and customization within a standard framework. And like Meccano, where different components can be combined to create complex machines, the system allows for the integration of various building elements, from structural components to mechanical systems, in kind of like a plug-and-play manner. This approach combines sustainable, prefabricated, efficient design flexibility to address modern housing challenges. Can you elaborate on the benefits of this concept?
It's a very early concept, and whether it's digitized or not, I think there's huge benefits in productivity when you start to think about systems. There's a few hundreds of thousands of new housing units that needs to be built in BC alone by 2030, right? So when you start thinking about that kind of demand, you really need to shift the thinking from one-offs and bespoke products to systems that are done and designed creatively so that they can be adaptable as well. I'm not advocating, or we're not advocating for a cookie cutter type of, everybody gets the same thing and all that. I think that's a thing of the past, and maybe it wasn't available without the technology, but now technology actually allows us to create adaptability within confined systems that have ranges. So I think once you start to understand that, you can address a lot of the complexity. So back to the concept of kit of parts is essentially thinking about the house or multi-story tower as a system of components, engineered systems. You're thinking about the structures, you're thinking about the wall panels, you're thinking about the enclosures, you're thinking about the window systems, you're thinking about the mechanical systems. All of these, if they can be plug and play, if they can be in a concept of understanding how they fit together, how multiple different panels can be swapped to give different performance targets, how different structural systems, whether you're using CLT components or steel structures, how they can fit together to create the ranges of adaptations that are needed, and then essentially fabricating all of these components offsite.
Really, the next 5-10 years for you, for the seat that you're sitting in, what adventure do you want to take on, seeing new iterations or new opportunities? And it could look like anything. What are your thoughts on that?
Next 5 years, I would love to see scalability done right, where you're really thinking around how can you be creative and adaptable. This project that we're working towards sort of paves a path, and I'm hoping that it's a successful one that can actually show us a way to be extremely creative, create homes for people that they love, work with materials that are beautiful, they're amazing for the environment, and how to put this all together in a system that just makes sense and is responsible is something I would love to see.
We've done a whole host of changes that are coming online, legalizing up to 3 or 4 units on single family lots, transit-oriented development changes. All local governments by the end of 2025 must update all of their official community plans.
Alkarim Devani is co-founder of Brown Square and Middle. For the past decade, Alkarim has been deeply involved in the neighborhood redevelopment through Round Square. His latest venture, Middle, focuses on scaling middle housing across Canada, working closely with municipalities and government partners. Currently, Alkarim is leading a digital-funded project in Kelowna, BC, developing modular components for middle housing and using GIS technology to streamline procurement and the pre-construction process. This initiative couldn't come at a more pivotal moment. Enter Bill 44, the small-scale multi-unit housing legislation introduced in 2024 to address BC's housing crisis. By increasing density near transit stops and eliminating public hearings for certain zoning areas, Bill 44 opens new opportunities for landowners, developers, and communities to create vibrant spaces with 3 to 6 housing units on lots previously limited to single-family homes. Alkarim's work perfectly aligns with this shift. In our discussions, we'll explore how Bill 44 breaks down barriers to middle housing, the importance of creating robust ecosystems to support this transformation, and empowering homeowners to become part of the solution. The term missing middle or gentle density has become a key way to describe the gap in housing options. Bill 44 feels like a turning point for BC's approach to housing development. How do you see this legislation reshaping the conversation? And what makes this moment so significant for the homeowners and folks in the communities?
What was so massive about these things is it shifts the conversations, because now we're not fighting about whether or not it's appropriate. If more people should live in these communities, the conversation shifted is how do we do it in a meaningful way, in a respectful way? That's really what I've enjoyed now, is our conversations are no longer about NIMBYs, YIMBYs, opposition. It's more just okay, the policy is what it is, the writing is on the wall, but we can do a good job. We can build a framework here that works for everybody, a process that works for everybody. And most importantly, what I've learned is when we started Middle, we came to this thesis and idea that Middle will only scale if Canadians are involved in solving the housing crisis. So our entire thesis is rooted in the fact that every single Middle project, fundamentally, every gentle density, every ADU, starts with an everyday Calgarian citizen, Canadian, British Columbian who says, I want to do something on my home. And for the vast majority of the time, doing anything but selling it was unapproachable. And what Bill 44 did is it basically broke that barrier. As Middle now, we're trying to fill that. How do we simplify the process so that more people can join the ecosystem? Because I believe it's the only way we solve the housing crisis is if more people recognize they have a role to play.
You've touched on a vital concept in modern housing development, the ecosystem approach. In this context, an ecosystem refers to the interconnected network of stakeholders, processes, and technologies that collaborate to create, finance, and manage housing. Each part influences and depends on the other. Let's explore the challenges you've mentioned. The missing middle isn't just about income or housing forms, but about the disconnect within the ecosystem. Can you elaborate on these challenges and share how your work aims to unite the ecosystem and create stronger foundations for middle housing development?
The thing that I think I realized about the middle housing ecosystem from the outset is there was some cultural gaps. There were some things that even from just a robustness of a disconnected ecosystem, when we call it missing middle, people are always thinking we're referring to income or housing form, but the ecosystem is missing. We can't find appraisers that actually know how to appraise unless there are commercial appraisers who are I don't want to do 5 units. I've been doing 50 to 500 to, $1 million projects, but the residential appraisers are not allowed to appraise as per the Appraisal Institute of Canada. And so what I would say to you is there's this giant gap in the marketplace that's being band-aided and patched. And so what I think we recognized was okay, let's start to figure out where the gaps are. Let's try to unite a bit of this ecosystem. And that's what we've been doing. And we're about to roll out a product that's going to do that as well, which is about bringing the entire ecosystem together under one umbrella so we can learn from each other. And so I would say that was the first thing that we recognized. It's okay, there's missing education, there's missing transparency, there's missing ecosystem, there's missing financial tools. Let's get all of them in a room and figure out what is something that we think we can deploy today.
This approach isn't just about building more homes and building them faster. It's about creating smarter, more sustainable communities. The focus on infill development is certainly going to help reduce that urban sprawl and make better use of existing infrastructures. Moreover, the standard design approach is being adopted at a provincial level. The BC government has recently made available free standardized designs for small-scale, multi-unit housing that can be used throughout the province. By combining fast-track approvals, standardized designs, and technology integrations, they're providing a comprehensive solution to the housing challenge. So let's talk about the work you're doing with Kelowna and their innovative approach to housing. I understand they've been at the forefront of fast-tracking programs for middle housing since 2015. Can you tell us about your collaboration with the city and how you've helped evolve their process? I'm particularly interested in hearing about the pre-approved plans, the use of GIS, and how you're engaging property owners and the industry.
You know what? And I would say kudos to the city of Kelowna, who launched the first fast track back in 2015, before I even knew what middle housing really was. Fundamentally, they had already been thinking about this. So for them to reach out to us, we were super honored because they had already recognized the power of this. They already had a process. It was overly successful where they had to shut it down. And we were able to bolt our understanding of what's happened and try to basically work with them to create a better framework. And so not a catalog plan, but a pre-approved plan with 5 different architects with full consulting drawings so that you pay one time, reduce costs, and now you get to a building permit within 10 business days. And Kelowna already has AI and James Moore in their group. It's really part of their ethos. And so they believe they could turn these things out in 2 days. And so we have these 5 plans. They went out in June, and now they want to add, potentially 10 more. And the thing about James is he's a critical thinker, right? So he's not doing this to just add an inspiration. He's no, I want people to deploy these on the ground. And so how do we know they're deployable and where they're deployable? And so we did this GIS mapping study to understand, okay, 1,300 of the sites today are eligible. 1 for 1 can meet these first 5 plans. And so we contacted those 1,300 people and the entire industry and said, come and learn about what we're doing in Fast Track, but also how you deliver middle housing and how we can support you in the delivery of that. And so trying to move people along, and there's a lot of antics in housing. It's become very political, and I believe housing should be bipartisan. It's can't make it an issue because it's political. We just need more housing, and you can't make it go faster then it needs to move, because then you mess it up, if that makes sense. And so I think for us, we're cultivating seeds. We're establishing roots, which will then lead to the trees that we need that will be there for, hundreds of years. We've treated this problem over 30, 40, 50 years. It didn't create itself last year or the year before. So I would just say the technology that we're infusing, pre-approved plans, modular implementation, those things can be introduced once you have a framework. And so we've been building this framework, not only in Kelowna, but now in 5 different municipalities, to really get alignment on the framework, industry buy-in, administrative buy-in, community buy-in, and then come with a delivery mechanism that simplifies it for everything.
With these policy changes, unlocking land and creating a supportive ecosystem, we are certainly empowering homeowners to become developers themselves. Could you elaborate on how your program equips them with ready-to-use tools and resources to facilitate this transformation?
I can tell you the fundamental issue today is that you have the wrong avatar, because my avatar is that existing homeowner. And when you speak to them or you create processes, we need to make it so simple that they believe they can be a part of this. And I clarified, it's I don't think they're all going to pick up tool belts and then all of a sudden become builders. And I don't think they're going to go and become sophisticated, savvy developers. And that's why you need an ecosystem approach. Let's get them the right people. Let's create predictable frameworks, predictable costs, predictable financing, because it does take a village. You can't have 10 developers that make up 90% of the middle housing ecosystem. It's not equitable. It's not fair. And that's where I kind of stepped back and said, I never got into this to own 150 townhome rental units that appreciate and then sell. It's just not what motivated me every day. What motivated me was seeing the families, or having someone who was recently divorced, crying in tears about being able to live in the same community as her children still. That's what motivates me. And I can't do more of that if I can't figure out how to get the existing homes that are aging and those people feeling like they can do this.
Especially in constrained housing situations, financial ones, especially in the city of Vancouver, you have mom and pop that own the land and they want to develop something that they could have a unit, their family could have a unit, they could have a rental opportunity for someone in the community. And I look at that and go, all I can say is that is an opportunity for a really sleek solution.
I took it the same way. I love it. You're giving me the big flag and the real challenge, which means that there is an inverse, which is the opportunity, and how do we build that system better? And so I can't agree more. And I would say, like, what you're talking about is what we say to everybody, is that there is no single person better positioned to do a development project but the landowner, because they bought at a time when the land was not too expensive. And so we had a high school teacher at middle school in Kelowna, and he's got 2 kids, and he's lived in this house for 25 years, something like that. And so, he's like, listen, Al, like, my option is to sell, and I have to find a place to live. And I still got to figure out where my kids are going to live, because I'm concerned, like, they're not staying in this community or in this city if I can't find a way to, like, create. I came here today solely with this idea of, like, I'm not trying to, like, take the $1 million that I made and go do something or figure it out. I'd rather just figure out how to, like, create more housing for my kids so they could raise their families near me and here. And it's like, yes, that's it. And, like, we need early adopters today, and then we need to shore up our early adopters. I never wanted to be an academic or theoretical or just like someone who says, oh, the policy's there, why isn't anyone doing it? Well, it's like they're not doing it because something is fundamentally broken or it's still not working. And so how do we encourage people to actually take action? We have to demonstrate. We have to lead by example. And so that's been a huge pillar for us, because we're developers. Like Darlene and I, traditionally, we've done it. We know how hard it is. We know what the unpredictability of it can be like. So it's like, let's just do it ourselves. Let's prove to the ecosystem it's viable, so then they have confidence, and let's solve the challenges we know we're going to embark on.
At Digital, it's our model where we want to de-risk those proof of concepts. And being able to support a project like this was a no-brainer, because you're like, oh, this is going to take that opportunity that me and you were both very excited about, like really drill in what is a collaborative solution. I mean, you have surrounded yourself and continue to do, and good people attract good people, right? You've got the partnerships that paint that end-to-end opportunity for unlocking this type of housing, which is, for me anyway, like one of those biggest conversations around the water cooler, because we all know policy sometimes, is made based on very little data or understanding. And, a lot of discussion has been like, is this bill really all that useful? Because how is mom and pa that have all their assets locked in land going to actually develop? You provide a product like you have and an opportunity like you have that gives that repeatability, certainty, predictability, and the fear goes away. So then all of a sudden you've got confidence in purchasing. And then you've also like stimulated the economy in such a way where we've got thriving businesses meeting the needs and creating housing production, which, is super rad. Where would you ideally like to scene set, 5, 10 years, 50 years, whatever you're thinking?
I'm excited about housing on many fronts. I know it's expensive. I know land continues to get more expensive. I know policies continue to maybe not do the work that needs to do. But man, we are moving so fast as a civilization when it comes to these technologies and to these things that we can implement. And I would just say modular panelized systems, there's so many things that are happening that I think are awesome, that I think are really going to work and help move the dial. And then I'll maybe just end here, just because a lot of people say, I've heard this across the ecosystem. What you're talking about is not maybe a sizable addressable market. So this could make a significant difference. It can mobilize a bunch of people to get involved in housing. What will make a difference is people need to learn how to become developers. The best place to do that is in this housing forum. It's not to go and do an apartment building with an elevator and concrete, because I've been there. It's hard, it's expensive, and you could lose your shirt real quick. And so if we could use this almost as this ecosystem where we cultivate more builders, more developers, more trades, and we start to use this as a platform, that's a part of middle housing that people don't even fundamentally realize or disconnect with. And so I would just say so much hope and really excited about what this housing forum has done for me and what I think it can do for so many Canadians.
I'd like to thank my guests, Yahia and Al-Karim, for their time today and their insights. We've seen today how advanced technologies like AI-driven design tools, standardized modular systems are streamlining the design process, enhancing collaboration between stakeholders, and significantly reducing the time and costs associated with obtaining regulatory approvals. These innovations are not only accelerating housing production, but also improving the quality and the environment of performance of new developments. In our next episode, we'll be moving further along the end-to-end framework to explore pre-construction and the procurement phase. We'll examine how new technologies and innovative approaches are optimizing supply chain management and preparing for efficient construction. Join us as we continue to uncover how innovation is reshaping each stage of the housing production, bringing us closer to more efficient, sustainable, and affordable housing solutions for British Columbia. Thank you for your time, and especially for being interested. This podcast is just one way Digital and folks you hear in these episodes are working together to accelerate housing production and position British Columbia as a leader in housing innovation. But there is so much more that we're doing. Digital's Housing Growth Innovation Program invests in mission-driven projects targeting key housing issues, as well as encouraging collaboration and information sharing through workshops, events, and more. We'd love to hear from you. Reach out through our website at housing.digitalsupercluster.ca for more information. This podcast and Digital's Housing Growth Innovation Program are made possible with the financial support of the Province of British Columbia through the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs.
Another Everything Podcast production. Visit everythingpodcast.com, a division of Pattison Media. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast.